Welcome back to the podcast, Christy. What's new?
Hi, Cheristy. Well, we were chatting a little bit before. So I feel like there's not a lot of updates when we do these, but I had a big update today. I was driving over to record with you. I'm like, I got stuff. So I'm getting ready to go back to work. Our district is finally going to be launching hybrid at the end of the month. So I've been very busy with that, professionally and personally, just trying to wrap my mind around that.
Yeah. How do you feel about it? Are you excited? Are you nervous? Are you like, no? What are you gonna do with your kids, etc.?
Yeah, it's more of a childcare issue that's stressing me out, I think, than going back. But we're trying to coordinate that. And I think there's just like a lot of tiredness over this past year of all the change in schedules for parents, from like hybrid to more synchronous learning. And this is 2 days a week. Now it's one, and it's conference week. So it's changed. I feel like my head is spinning. So that's my child's life. And then I have my work life, and it's a different district. So we have all their set of schedules.
Right.
So that's the thing making my head spin. The couple fun things I'm looking forward to, my team, I'm on like the calendar team. So we put a calendar together for the staff, like an exposure therapy calendar around going back. And it's called Oh Snap, We're Going Back. And it's based on like the 21 days to build a new habit, which if you listen to or like read BJ Fogg's work, he's like, that science isn't super strong, but whatever, it sounds good. And so we were like, oh, we need to try on our work clothes. So I've been like trying on work clothes, wearing more work clothes, doing a little shopping to get a few new things that fit and feel comfortable. And then the other sweet thing is that part of what we're working on is staffing every day, because we're all part-time at the elementary level, so that we can meet the kindergartners at the gate and walk them to class because they've never been on campus. And with COVID, the parents can't go past our gate. So they're just going to have to drop them off. They can't even walk them to their teacher's classroom. And that just seems so sweet. And I'm actually very excited for that. So I'm trying to focus on that because the other part of me is very overwhelmed.
Well, you know what? It made me kind of giggle, but I love that you're doing that 21-day exposure calendar, and you're like, today we're gonna get some clothes.
Because it's so basic, but yeah.
It does kind of make it sound like really fun. Like, kind of makes me want to go back.
One of them, you can go to the farmer's market and buy a succulent to decorate your office. Just give yourself a permission slip there. So we had a good time with it. But yeah, I mean, I haven't commuted down there in quite a while. So it'll be a big transition.
That will be a really big transition. And I think figuring out the childcare, this is like the tricky piece, I think, just across the board, is like, as parents go back to work, if their kids aren't back in school, like it really poses a big problem. And, you know, like a lot of preschools haven't been able to survive the pandemic. So there's like limited spaces in like childcare programs, after school programs. And I'm sure some will like pop up because of the need or whatever. But that's like really stressful to figure out. So good luck.
I know that's what we're talking about, being a mom, right? I saw Kamala Harris talking about it, supporting us as working moms right now. It's very challenging. So how have you guys been the past couple weeks?
Yeah, I've been pretty good. I can't really complain. I'm trying to think, you know, I'm just like thinking of like, because my kids are in school like 2 days a week. And one thing I've loved about this, like parents can't walk the kids in, is like, I just drive up, drop off, drive away.
Yeah. Boom, boom, boom.
And that's actually been really nice. It's been like, it's like it used to take maybe like 45 minutes of my day, walk my kids to school, drop them off, kind of wait around, make sure everything's good, walk home. Now I'm like, drive up, drop off, bye.
Well, it's good because they're only in school for half the time practically. So, you know, I'm glad it cuts off a little bit of that morning ritual time of walking them.
Another thing my daughter's school has done that I really like is, because they're trying to limit the exposure, it's like each grade has like a time slot to be dropped off.
Yes.
So it used to be like just chaos, you know, like the whole street lined
with
cars. But literally I can leave my house 5 minutes before and drop off in time. I'm not like waiting in like a big line of cars. So that's kind of been like an interesting, you know, update based on them making adjustments that I hope to kind of stick to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, why don't we invite our guest on now? We are so lucky because today we have Dr. Rachel Cowart joining us. Rachel is the research director of Take This, which you can find at takethis.org, and science content creator of Psychgeist, which you can find on YouTube. She's an internationally recognized speaker and author on a range of topics relating to the uses and effects of digital games, including its impact on physical, social, and psychological well-being. She's published several books and scientific articles relating to the psychology of games, and more recently, the relationship between games and mental health specifically. One of her most recent books, A Parent's Guide to Video Games, won an Indies Award in the science category. She's also the author of the children's storybook collection, Pragmatic Princess, which was a finalist for the Next Generation Indie Book Awards in 2020. For more information about Rachel and her work, you can visit her website at www.rcowert.com. And I will add a little bit to that because Rachel went to grad school with us, me and Christy, and that's how we know each other. But she went on, obviously, to become a research psychologist, which is super cool. And I feel like so grateful to like have this personal connection with you, because I think what you study is so relevant, but also like not very many people do it. So we're so lucky to have you here. So thank you so much for being on.
Oh, thank you for having me. And it's great to be surrounded by SCU alum.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Rachel, I have a little bit of a funny story before we jump into like questions and stuff. About a week or two, my husband knew that we were going to be recording with you. And he was like, he texted me this article from The Atlantic. And he's like, is this the same Rachel Cowert that you're interviewing? And it was.
Yes.
It wasn't about gaming, but it was about like how our brains have been affected by the pandemic and like how we're like forgetting all this stuff and like it just feels strange. And I hope you don't mind me sharing, but it was a pretty funny part of the article. You're quoted as saying that like you had Friday night dinners every week with your neighbor before the pandemic, and recently your neighbor reminded you, hey, remember when we used to have Friday night dinners? And you were like, huh?
Yeah, it's true. I completely was like, we did do that every Friday. I completely forgot.
Oh my gosh, it cracked me up. It's a pretty funny article. We'll link it in the show notes because it was cute. It doesn't have anything to do with gaming, but it is relevant to people's brain during the pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah. It was funny when they interviewed me for that article, and I told that story. It's always funny when you talk to people because you never know what they're going to pick up. And so when the article was published, I was like, "That's the story that she picked up." But it's relatable. It's
right.
Relatable.
I feel like we
totally
need that.
Yeah.
So cool. We get to talk with Rachel from, she's coming from Canada. I just think this is so fun.
The Great White North.
The Great White North. So it's so great. And we figured out I missed you in graduate school based on our years, but you and Kirsty know each other and have stayed in touch. And she's talked to me for a long time about your work, which is now more relevant for me based on the age of my kids. And you're a mom as well. But also in my work as a school-based mental health therapist. As you can guess, there's lots of video games.
I'm sure. I'm sure it comes up a lot.
So I'm excited that we get to pick your brain.
Yeah, me too. And I'll mention too, I know the readers can't see it, but I'm holding your book, A Parent's Guide to Video Games. I totally recommend this book to everybody. But I was so lucky because when you wrote this book, you reached out to me and asked me if I would review it before it went to print. And so I am quoted on the book.
You are.
Right.
You are on the back.
Okay. And I love the aesthetics and I love your book cover.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I really love the colors and the design of the cover. So I went Kindle for that, but I have, and we'll mention it later, but I have your Pragmatic Princess because it is just the right spot for my kiddos. So.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Christy and I were saying before you got on the call, you have written so many books,
yes.
contributed so many books and are so accomplished. It's quite impressive.
Yeah.
Very kind. Thank you. I have a lot of books. That's a true statement.
It's a true thing.
It is. It's funny because also you guys can't see this, but they can see my office. I have one row on my bookshelf that's all books, but then I have my books over here. So I can find them. And every time I'm like, no, those are mine. So I can find them. And they were like, those are all yours. I'm like, I guess.
I can see it's a good number of books over there. From here, it looks like at least 10, maybe more.
And it looks like you've written quite a bit for clinicians, right? To support clinicians in their work. Yes. And then I think we highlighted the the main two that parents and people listening would probably want to pick up.
Yeah.
For sure. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So
The other ones are more academic.
More academic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in your book, A Parent's Guide to Video Games, you kind of lay out like what the stereotype is. And I think we can all sort of call to mind, you know, what do we think of as a video gamer? And we would say possibly, this is the stereotype, right? Like an antisocial, basement dwelling, possibly likely to commit violence, might be addicted to the video games, and might even be a misogynist. That's kind of the stereotype. And I'm curious how you would describe what is the average gamer actually like?
Like everybody, because billions of people play video games. Half of them are women, average gamers in their mid-30s. No evidence to suggest they are any more antisocial or overweight than anybody else. Really just every person could be a gamer, every person you see.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be a gamer? Like, how much do you have to play to be qualified as a gamer?
Great question. I've been on a soapbox about this for a while, about being a gamer. So a gamer is a social identity, right? It's you feel like you're part of the community of gamers. So my whole life, I've always felt like a gamer. I have 2 small children. I have not played any games besides Animal Crossing in the last maybe 5 years, but I would still call myself a gamer. Now, my mom, who plays games constantly on her iPad, would never in a million years call herself a gamer. So it's really about how you feel that you relate to this community and this social identity. And, you know, do you have stuffed animals behind you that are from video games? And do you wear like geeky clothing? So there's no limit. There's no limit.
Okay. That's helpful.
That's funny that you mentioned the clothing, because my children, they wear Animal Crossing, Nintendo, Pokemon. They got all the like clothes that match their favorite games. And I will just say that since the pandemic began, we have begun a love affair with Animal Crossing, and it's a popular one. But I have to say, like, it has been such a great experience. My daughter, she's 8. And her best friend and her, since probably like last summer, probably like last June, they started FaceTiming while playing Animal Crossing. And then they're just constantly going back and forth to each other's islands. And then it's cute because Animal Crossing does this fun stuff where it's like they'll have like a concert that's like just happening in the month of like July, and they'll have fireworks that's just happening in the month of January. And they'll like set dates, like play dates, to attend these things, and they get so excited. And the fact that like her friend is like on FaceTime at the same time, you see them both like screaming. They went to one of the concerts, and like the concert, I forget the little dog that's like the singer. He talked to one of them, and they were like, he talked to me.
That's so cute.
It cracked me up. But we've had a really great experience with games in our household. So which goes against the stereotype that we were just talking about.
Well, it does. And I think, you know, especially Animal Crossing, I gave a talk late last year at the National Communication Association about games in the after times, games post-COVID. And half of my talk was about Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's really changed the narrative of how parents see games, like especially because you have this idea of games are only violent or games are only a waste of time. And then you have something very wholesome and social and colorful and cute, and you know, an Animal Crossing, and you see like, you know, your kids get excited. Like my 6-year-old also super into Animal Crossing. She loved all the Christmas stuff and all the Halloween stuff, and I think it's really helped change the perception of what games can be.
Right. Yeah, definitely. It's supposed to be sort of like an alternate reality, right? And but it like floods over into like your real life, and it's been very sweet. And I know a lot of adults even like that game, so it's like a very universal game. So
it is. I play.
Yeah,
and I'm 38.
You play.
So,
all right.
Yes.
All right. I'm putting on my list. I feel like in the schools we hear about Minecraft, Roblox, and Fortnite the most. Those are like the 3 popular classics. And I was telling you, my oldest got into Minecraft during this time, and she does some of those FaceTime play dates and things like that. But she loves just to build.
Yeah, Minecraft is great. You know, when parents ask me like about games, Minecraft is always my go-to suggestion. Minecraft is wonderful. You can learn so many things from Minecraft.
Yeah. I love that. I don't think we're hearing that very often. So, all right, I'm gonna put Animal
Play
Crossing
more
on the list.
Minecraft and Animal Crossing. Yeah.
Yeah, they're both very pro-social games, and with Animal Crossing, my daughter was, she was learning to read around the time that she started playing Animal Crossing, and it really did help her feel motivated to read. And now she's a very confident reader. She's reading chapter books and really enjoying reading a lot. But I think that little push of like having the motivation to be able to read what the interactions are happening on the screen really gave her added motivation. So.
That's
Absolutely.
interesting. I love that. Rachel, are you familiar with Prodigy?
No.
Okay, so it wouldn't be like a game, but it's an app that they've put on in my daughter's school district. And I think the one where I work, when they go into their portal of different apps they can use, and it's for math. But if you answer a certain amount of questions, they basically incorporate a video game. So you get to go to your world and earn money so that you can shop and have new pets and get like a decorated sword and go to these different places. And the kids love it, right? Obviously. And that's been something that's been really fun during this time too. And it's been super popular in her class. But they're taking all the good parts, I feel, of the gaming and incorporating it with the academics.
Yeah. Games are really motivating and that's why that's great to do. And also why Animal Crossing is so like, it's just inherently motivating.
Yeah.
Play them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think this sort of leads into the next question we were thinking about, which is sort of like addiction, motivation. What kinds of words are we using here? If I think especially during the pandemic as parents, there's a lot of guilt. I'm letting my kids use a lot more screen time than usual. Am I making them socially isolated? Am I making them addicted? So, I mean, how would you sort of help us understand the difference between those two things, or what are your opinions on that?
So many opinions. You got the juicy questions today. Okay, so video game addiction. I have a little spiel. You're going to get my spiel about video game addiction. Okay, good. So the World Health Organization in 2019 came forward and said they were going to classify gaming disorder, which is what they call gaming addiction, in their new diagnostic manual. The American Psychiatric Association did not follow suit. They put it in the back of the DSM, which is their diagnostic manual, as something that requires further research.
Okay.
Now, scholars in the field side mostly with the APA because there does not seem to be any evidence at all that games are inherently addictive. And that's really kind of the trigger point, because right now the only behavioral addiction recognized by the American Psychiatric Association is gambling addiction. So addiction to gaming would beat out other things that we've been talking about for decades with set treatment plans: sex addiction, addiction to work, addiction to shopping. None of those are in there. So it seems odd that gaming would get pushed forward besides anything beyond like just moral panic about games and people just kind of want to throw it in there. When the pandemic started, the World Health Organization came out and said, games are a great way to pass time in the pandemic. So that adds like further confusion to like, well, should we be playing games or not? So as it stands now, there is no evidence, not a single research study pointing to something about games being inherently addicting, which is key, because if you want to talk about treatment, there's certainly people who use games maladaptively, but it's most likely due to something else. Is it underlying depression? Is it underlying anxiety? Is it underlying environmental stress? That's where the treatment plan should be, right? Not taking away the games as like the source of the problem.
Right. That's a really interesting take. And it kind of reminds me of like, I can't remember what the study was, but I read some study about how there was some research going on behind like people with PTSD and how they were using video games to treat it. And I can't remember anything more beyond that, but it does make me think like we should think of these things maybe in a reverse order from the stereotype of like what is the underlying issue. And
correct.
Yeah, definitely.
And how are games being used as tools? That's how I like to frame it. Like, I know who you're talking about, the study with PTSD. It's, her name eludes me. She's in the UK, but she's done some amazing work looking at people who have post-traumatic stress disorder from being exposed to like wartime scenarios, playing games that are war themed. And it has given them a sense of control in like their lucid dreaming. Yeah. It's incredible work. So it's like, as a tool, these kinds of games are really helpful. As a tool, Animal Crossing has been very helpful as a social tool during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
So
Right.
And I think people want to put things in boxes, right? And it's like, and then there's sort of like the vernacular of what addiction is versus what's maybe we classify as clinicians and treatment providers. But if it's a problem for somebody and they think it's a problem and they want to come work on that, great. Like but you don't necessarily have to have it as a specific gaming disorder or have it be in the APA. And like you said, it can certainly be used in an unhealthy way, but to have a little bit more understanding about that and a thoughtful treatment plan. Yeah.
Yes. And I think it's important for parents too, because I very much understand it looks like that the games are the source of the problem.
Right.
But you also have to think that games could be the coping strategy that has since become not helpful for them. Right. So necessarily just like ripping the game out of the wall and putting it in a closet, which is probably how my parents would have handled the situation. Speak to a professional, right? Or even talk to your child and be like, what purpose is this game serving for you? Is it social connection? Is it stress release? You know, what is it?
Right. Yeah, that's such a good point. I'm kind of thinking of like how video games have changed, especially in the last like I'm just throwing it out there, maybe 5 years, where a lot of games sort of have a social media aspect, and I feel like this is somewhat of a sister topic, but because it's like, how much social media exposure do we want our kids to have? But then when it's also attached to like a game, and I'm thinking of like the game like Fortnite, which has like a big social media aspect to it, which I don't play Fortnite. I don't know that much about it, but I know that much. But what's your take on something like that?
Yeah, when it comes to what's best for your kids, it is very much specific to the parent and the child. So my daughter is 6 and loves Minecraft, and we were talking about this before the show with Christy. She doesn't play with strangers, right? She plays with her neighbors and her cousins. And if she wants to play in a realm that's with strangers, it's like strict lockdown chat. You're not talking to anybody, and I'm keeping a really close eye on you. The older your child gets, the more those reins inherently get loosened. It's hard to tell a 15-year-old that he's not playing online with his friends that may also include strangers. But it's about, educating them about what's right and wrong and knowing how to use reporting tools and having conversations with them about things they might be exposed to. We talked about misogyny or toxic gamer cultures and that sort of thing. So there's no like easy right answer, but it's definitely parents' discretion based on age. Like a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, and 8-year-old, they have no reason to be interacting with strangers on the internet.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think there's so much, it's so scary as a parent and you want to protect your kids, right? But I think for me as a therapist with younger kids, I'm not there yet. So I'm like, if I were talking to a parent and you're going to get ready to launch these kids when they're 18, you do want them to have that critical thinking ability to think about, this doesn't feel good and why, and who can I ask for support, or what are my tools? But it's scary to like have that trial and error because it's not going to be perfect. It's going to be bumpy.
Correct.
Yeah. And I was just thinking a little bit more about, the social dilemma on Netflix, because that sent a real ripple. We were also in the pandemic, so I feel like more people watched it.
Yeah, that's
right.
True.
And I personally didn't, because my phone was blowing up from friends and I was like, I don't need more stress right now. But I think that really changed what a lot of my friends did in terms of restrictions and monitoring. And you said you had lots of opinions about that. So I wonder if you could share with us from like a researcher perspective versus just a Netflix documentarian.
Yes. So I say it's an opinion, but it's also, a fact. I am a researcher and a scientist. And we mentioned this too. Documentaries have to be, they want clicks, they want watches, they want to be controversial or compelling or whatever. It's not that what they say isn't true. What they say is true. Those algorithms exist. That's absolutely the way that a lot of websites work. And that is what it is. But there's a completely other side of it that was clearly not represented in the documentary, which is a lot of the stuff that we're talking about now, which are the positive sides of social media. So if we think about COVID-19 pandemic, I am currently pregnant, and my husband also has physical vulnerabilities, right? So when the lockdown started, we locked down. We have not gone anywhere for a year. Thank God for social media.
Right.
Thank God that I can play Animal Crossing with my nephews and connect with them. So I think there's like this whole other positive side that clearly didn't make it into the documentary. But we would be remiss not to acknowledge the incredible amounts of benefits that this technology has brought us.
Yeah.
Right. It is important to understand what the consequences are, like how much,
for sure.
they're tracking you and how secure your information
Yes.
is and all of that, and how you're
Yes.
being advertised to, etc. But the positive sides, you're really highlighting the positive sides of like, there's great benefits to some of these things, and we can be selective about it. And we can also perhaps even take steps to minimize, some of the negative stuff.
Yes, and we should. And I mean, it's not all like candy and roses, and there are clearly some like bad actors and like weird things happening. And when it comes to our children, I think that if the reaction is to lock things down, that's probably a good reaction. But not to the point where we're completely ignoring the fact that, like, especially for adolescents, when peers are like the most important thing to them right now, to say you're not going to be on social media, or you're not going to play games at all, you're not, like, completely locking that down is doing them a disservice when there's no other alternative.
Yeah.
Like there is now.
Right.
Huh. Yeah, we got to be real. We got to be realistic, especially during the pandemic. Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely.
It's hard when you don't understand it and you didn't grow up with it, but like every
Yes.
generation goes through that as parents,
Yes.
I imagine. And I feel like for Kirsty and I, like, the podcast was really born out of the pandemic, right? I had a lot of opinions, really snobby ones, about how awful Instagram was, because you have enough clients come to you saying, this app has like ruined my self-esteem. You start to have opinions about it, right? And then I needed this. And I really found that I could use it in a way that felt meaningful. And you can just flood your feed with the kind of people that you want to see content from. But it does take some of that discerning. And I think I can future thinking empathize with parents of teens that's got to be tricky and scary, but it's important to honor what it does for them.
It's going to be horrible. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. Oh my gosh. It's going to be really challenging. It's not easy. I mean, it's not easy, but it's important to be balanced, and all we can do is the best we can.
Yeah. This is kind of a side note, but I have been like quite grateful that my kids are like on the younger side during the pandemic, because I feel like, I don't have to deal with, like the issues that a teen parent would have to deal with in regards to, like, I feel like you can't really limit them leaving the house as much as you can, like a young child, or who they're interacting, etc. There's like a lot of challenges. But my friends who have teenage children are like, we feel so bad for you children during the pandemic.
Right.
You must be like out of your mind.
It's true. A lot of people have said that same thing to me too, because I took my kids out of school because they're not old enough to even have to be in school yet. And they're like, we feel bad for you. I'm like, you got teenagers. What?
Yeah.
Way worse.
Yeah. Way worse, right?
Yeah.
Back to the topic at hand, I wanted to ask you one more thing about kind of what's present now in the last 5 years. And I'm really actually thinking of like my son. He's 5. He loves to play Rocket League. Him and his dad play it together. So like they'll be like, like on a team, and sometimes even like, a friend will be on there too. And then they play. But my son has gotten really obsessed with the loot box perspective. All he wants to do is buy stuff to like make his car as cool as possible, or to earn stuff to make his car as cool as possible. And then it changes, every season they're changing it, like there's an Easter theme, there's a Christmas theme, etc. So what's your perspective on this? Because from what I was reading, the loot boxes are possibly problematic because it's kind of like a lottery experience. What do you think?
Yes. Yeah. So there's a lot of talk about regulating them in the same way you would regulate, like lottery, gambling type things. And in lots of countries across the globe, they are being strictly regulated. It's kind of difficult. I mean, I can talk about again, my opinions, but it's kind of difficult to draw a hard line because it's kind of unclear. So loot boxes are enticing. Of course they are. Of course, kids want all the cool stuff for their cars. As a parent, if you do not want your child to spend all your money on loot boxes, step 1 is restrict the spending on the console so they can't buy them, because trust me, they will want them. Regardless of who your child is, they will want them. They're made to be fun, and they play noises, and it's random and exciting. But for me, I always kind of considered them very similar to buying a pack of baseball cards, which is what I did when I was a kid. You don't know what you're going to get. It's a blind bag. You might get a really cool card. You might get a not so cool card. But at the end of the day, you get something. And that's really where the line is on whether it's gambling and whether it should be something that kids aren't allowed to access. Because from in a strict definitional sense, it's not gambling because you do always get something. There's a lot of talk that is about regulating in the industry, whether it's making it more transparent what the odds are of getting the cool things that you want, or whether the items should never give you like an in-game advantage, if it should just be a cosmetic item, which is kind of the side of the line that I'm on. Because if it gives you an advantage, then that is really enticing people to try and buy them.
Right.
So as a parent, shut down the credit card access because your kids will buy them all day long, and it's fun. And usually you can earn them with like in-game tokens and that kind of stuff. Right. And in that sense, is it really any different than my kids asking for a pack of Pokemon cards? For me, I see it as very similar.
Very similar. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. We do limit his, I think for Christmas, we gave him like $10 to spend. And ever since he's like,
mama
money.
Yeah.
It is like, we have like all of the restrictions that you can possibly have like put into place. But he every day is like, asks me, can I buy this? Can I buy that?
Yeah.
And anyways, so it is something to deal with. At the same time, he loves the game and he has incredible concentration for it and really enjoys play. You know, him and his dad like bond over it. So it's been
very cool.
Been pretty good experience overall, I'd say. So I am wondering, what is the advice that you would give to parents? Like, how can parents make video game choices for their children? How can they make the experiences more constructive, and all of that?
You need to stay engaged. Whether, that means not whether, it starts with knowing the age rating of the games that your children are playing. I mean, that's like bare minimum. If your child is under 10, they should not be playing games made for over 18, regardless of how much they want them. If they have an older sibling who's playing it, you need to be mindful of that and be aware of what kind of conversations that's going to spawn, because what they're being exposed to content wise. And then I think for parents too, another way to stay engaged, I always say play with them. I love that your husband plays with your son. Not all parents want to play games. My parents would have never in a million years, but they didn't. I played games my whole life. They never played with me. But you don't have to play to be engaged. You can look over their shoulder and be like, what are you playing?
Yes.
I'm playing Rocket League. Why do you like it? Like, it could be so simple as that, just to keep a pulse on what it is they're doing. Who are you playing with? Playing with strangers, shut that down. Oh, you're playing with your friend up the road? Okay, that's fun and that's okay. You really need to stay active and engaged, especially because now everything is online. And if you're not Googling how to keep them from talking to strangers or how to not spend money on your credit card to buy a bunch of loot boxes, that is really, the onus is on you as a parent to stay informed and know how to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's a lot. So I was telling Tracy, one of the big things we recommend in the school is common sense media.
Yes,
is one of our big
resource.
tools. And what you can do there is you can look by grade, you can look by age, you can look at just Netflix movies, Disney Plus movies, video games, and they have a rating of what parents say the age is, what common sense media says the age range is, and what kids say. And then they break it down by category: violence, sexual language, positive messages. And if you click on it, it'll literally give you an example. This is a cute movie for 5-year-olds, but the insults do include stupid. And you should know that. And you're like, okay, so now I can make my decision. And then what I love on there too, they have a family media contract in English and in Spanish that you can download for free. And it goes over what are the boundaries with this device, if they're being given a device. And the part that I really love that they talk about at the end is just honoring that technology is a part of our kids' lives. And we may not understand it, but it's important to this generation. And it asks the parent to honor that. And they come up with a plan. If you're starting to feel sad or you're starting to feel scared when you're on there, who can you talk to? What might that look like? And I sort of say, like, if your kid can't really understand that, then it's probably not time to get them their own iPad, right? But you can help them with Minecraft or Animal Crossing and be engaged and look over their shoulder and do the research. But it is overwhelming for us, right? I mean, it's a lot easier just to put on a movie on Netflix. We know what it is, there's restrictions, and leave it at that. But there are a lot of benefits as well.
Yeah, I mean, it does take more effort on the parents' part, but games are not going anywhere. I mean, especially over the last year, the market has absolutely gone bananas. And if we think about games as tools, as I mentioned earlier, you know, research has found they hone visual spatial skills, problem solving, multitasking, creativity, leadership skills, social connection, stress relief. Like there's so many benefits to this interaction. It's worth putting in the effort. I mean, even going to Common Sense Media is a fantastic resource. Like it doesn't have to take, you don't have to take a college course on how to do this, right? I mean, a few Google searches, you'll be good.
Yeah. And I think it's, you know, it feels simple when you're in these meetings over and over again and you feel like, well, I don't know. But I think a big thing too for parents is setting the limit and the transition getting off the game. And there's so many creative ways to do that, right? You can have timers on your iPad or whatever your device is, or I use a visual timer for my daughter because she's in distance learning. And you would think they would get it. They'd be like, but mom, you set the timer. But it does feel a little different, like the device is telling them that it's over versus you're telling them. So those are just some of those little tips and tricks. And if it's, what are your thoughts? Like if you have the like tantrum coming off of it, to me, that means a sign that we just need to do it like for a shorter amount of time, not take it away. But I mean, I think this is the thing parents want to know.
I love that you asked this because I wanted to mention it because this is the thing that all parents ask me. The analogy I give is imagine you were eating a donut and someone came by and ripped the donut out of your hand after you had taken like one bite. How would you feel? You would be very bad. I'm 9 months pregnant. I don't know how upset I would be if someone took a donut out of my hand right now.
That's right.
Very upset.
Very upset.
And games are similar, right? They're reinforcing, they're fun, they're enjoying eating the video game donut. So I suggest setting a timer is a great idea, a visual aid. And children are very bad at managing time. And games are very engaging, which makes managing time harder because they lose their perspective of time when they're playing that it's just a phenomenon that happens because it's engaging. So I advise you have 10 minutes to go. You have 5 minutes to go. You have 2 minutes. It's Minecraft. You got to save. You got to save and quit because in 2 minutes you have to get off and I don't want you to lose your progress. And I know it seems silly, but they don't know what 10 minutes feels like. If you say you have 10 minutes and you're like 10 minutes ended 10 minutes ago and you get up, they don't know that. They can't tell. So it's about gradual. You have 2 minutes to finish that donut, Rachel. You better eat it. Trust me, I would get it done in 2 minutes.
Yeah, give me a boundary. I'll work with that.
Yes.
I love that too. That also means you got to be engaged to know that Minecraft means you have to save it. So you need to have those little pieces to know. I think a lot of the people put out there, it's like you're working on your piece of art and like they take it away at the end. And so that's really helpful. I like that.
Yes. That's why you look over their shoulder, right? Like when I would start to play online games back in my day, and my mom would say like, can't you pause it? No, you can't actually pause it. But like knowing that you can't can help you set those, okay, I have to give her 15 minutes because I know she's got to get somewhere to save it.
Yeah. You know, I often, it depends on the game, but you know, like if it's a game that has like a start and a stop, like Rocket League does, I'll tell my son like when this game is over, perfect, stop. And I then have to pay attention because if I don't notice when it stops, he starts the next game.
Absolutely.
But as long as I'm on my game and I notice it, that has worked pretty well because it is so important to him that he's able to finish what he's started.
That's a great point. That's why again parents have to be engaged because you can't say 5 more minutes because that a Fortnite match could last 30 minutes. You know, you don't know until you're in it. So yeah, but you also do. Of course, kids are going to sneak a second donut, Mom. You have to keep an eye on them.
Of course, right. Yeah, for sure. Is there any concerns that you think parents should be particularly watching out for, like, you know, such as like if they are tuned in, let's say they're a teenager and they are being exposed to some like attitudes towards women that are not favorable, stuff like that.
Yeah, you need to talk with your kids about it. I talk about it in A Parent's Guide to Video Games. So when I wrote that book, it was based off of an academic book I published the year before called The Video Game Debate. And I wanted to take the information, is very kind of dense and scientific, and put it in a way that all parents could read. But I also reached out to parents and said, what do you want to know? So the only chapter in A Parent's Guide that's not in the other book is about misogynistic and toxic cultures because they're very concerned that their kids are going to be exposed to inappropriate language, and they probably will be. like to be perfectly honest. So it's about telling them the internet is an extension of the real world. Just because you feel like you're visually anonymous does not make it right to talk in ways that you would not talk to somebody, in face to face. And actually having that conversation with both your girl players, because they're more likely, research shows, to be targets of harassment, but also male players, because they're more likely to be the perpetrators of the harassment. Now, from a research perspective, a little tidbit you can give as a tool for your kids' toolkit. The best way to diffuse this behavior in games is to actually say, hey, that's not cool, which is easier to do in a space in which you feel visually anonymous, in which there won't be repercussions, right? So it's about telling them you're gonna come in contact with this language at some point. Be the change you want to see in the world. Tell that person, this is not okay, stop acting this way, you're ruining it for everyone. And that does actually extinguish the behavior more than reporting, even though you should also do that too, and all those other things. So it is a concern, it will happen, but if you give your kids the tools to recognize it and how to handle it when they do encounters, that's the best that we could do as parents. Because when our kids are grown, they're going to be on the internet and see a lot of things. So this is a good first training step from something very specific.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great training step too for what we talk about with kids around, being an upstander instead of a bystander, and all this language we're using around how we can create a culture of inclusion and positivity at school. And this might be a great way to start that might trickle into doing it in person. It's sort of what we do in therapy when we're working with someone. You want to set that boundary. Let's talk it out right now. Maybe write down how you might say it. We've got a script, and you might be just a little bit more likely to do that at some point in person.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I feel like there's like a children's book in there of like how to be
Rachel, children's book next.
How to be an upstander on the games.
I don't have it with me. This week I published a new book, ladies.
It's just another week. Obviously, every month. Tell us.
It's called Invisible Friends. It is the first short story to come out of the Pragmatic Princess universe, and it's about stranger danger on the internet. So it's not about upstanding, but it is about if a stranger tries to talk to you,
right.
It's still in the realm. Oh, that's so exciting. Well, first of all, congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you.
To read it and to share it with my kids.
Absolutely.
We should bring up the Pragmatic Princess.
Oh, we sure should.
Yeah. So all of you listeners can't see it, but I'm holding up the Pragmatic Princess. And this is 26 stories that you have written that, why don't you tell us about it? Tell us, first of all, why did you decide to write this book? Because it's not about video games. And then what do you hope it will do for kids?
Yeah, so Pragmatic Princess was born out of necessity. I have a daughter, as I mentioned before, and she loves to read, and I was reading different books to her, and I was getting annoyed that books with female protagonists had to somehow be superheroes. They had to have superhuman powers. They had to be, princesses, like actual princesses. Mine aren't actual princesses; they're everyday girls. Or they had to have a boy to come and help them solve their problems, and I was just getting real annoyed. And so I reached out to a friend of mine who publishes books, and I was like, you need to commission a book that celebrates the everyday girl, her everyday abilities, doing everyday things. And she was like, why don't you write it? And I was like, I don't write those things. I write science books.
Right.
And she was like, give it a go. And I guess I can, because I did. So that's what I did. So I wrote the stories of Pragmatic Princess, and I launched it on Kickstarter, and it raised $26,000 in 30 days. Wow. And it came to life, and now it's a real book.
Now it's amazing. A real book.
We have it too.
Oh, good. Wow. At the end of the book, it talks a little bit about the science of how the stories were created, and how they're meant to be impactful, and how they're meant to reach kids. So I thought that was kind of an interesting addition for the parents at the end.
Yes, you can't take the science out of the scientist. I figured if I was going to write stories so they rhyme, because that helps foster reading, and they model appropriate behavior, like what to do if somebody's being mean to you. And I just wanted to empower my daughter, but also empower, it's not just for girls. I know it's called Princesses, but it's just stories where girls are the center and the heroes of their own stories, right? I like to say they build their own castles, right? They can solve their own problems with just everything they have inside of them now.
Right.
I love that.
It's so important for us to see, strong female leads. It's important for boys. It's important for girls. It's important for everybody that we get to see more of that. So
absolutely.
Bravo. I love it.
Thanks. Thanks.
And so excited. I can't wait to get the follow-up book that you wrote too. So that's cool.
Also out of necessity.
Yeah.
You know what though? So Invisible Friend, I wrote it because I have the Stranger Danger book, Berenstain Bears, which I love. It was mine, but it's like a guy in the park with like his like remote control airplane, like, hey child, come over here. I was like, this is not the encounters that my children will have.
Yeah.
We need to modernize.
Okay, Berenstain Bears is a whole thing that we could go on a side podcast with, but they have such beautiful illustrations and such nostalgia, and they're so popular. There's like 1,000 of them, and some of them are still sweet and cute, but some of them are horrible. There is one about welcoming a new baby, and at the end, the older brother like punches the little baby in the face.
I have that one.
What
is this book? Just because they're cute bears doesn't you can just like smack your little baby in the face. I mean, it's just so interesting, right? How generations shift. And I do think this generation of parents, we want to know. I mean, I think it's beyond just therapists and it's beyond just Silicon Valley. We want to know the science. We want to be informed. And I love that that's such like a meaty book. I think of your book as like, you know, the 5-minute bedtime stories, those thick ones you can get from Disney, except here's stories that align more with our modern day values, and there's research behind it. But especially as you get into those kids who are like kinder, first, second grade, who can read a little bit more, they have more to dig into than just one story.
Exactly. Yes. And I thank you. I'm glad that you guys have the book and love it. And I think that it's an educational book without being like preachy educational. Right?
Yeah. It's great. So how can people find you? What are your links? And we will put these in the show notes, and I personally know what they are, but go ahead and say them for our listeners.
Yes. If you want to learn more about me and my work, you can go to my personal website, which is rkowert.com. You can find me on YouTube at Psychgeist, which is Psychgeist. And then if you're interested in more learning about games, mental health and games, of course, visit takethis.org. We're a mental health nonprofit that focuses specifically on providing support to gaming communities. And there's a lot of information and resources there, both for parents and for gamers themselves.
Yeah, I actually looked that up before getting on the call, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I didn't know that anything like that existed.
Yeah.
So that's
we were the first ones in the space. Yeah, no, it's really good because, you know, gamers, it's a cultural competence. Sometimes when people are feeling like go to a clinician for depression, for instance, and they play games, and maybe games are like a tool that they use in their toolkit, and people aren't aware of what role it can play. Like, it's really disheartening to go see a professional and they're like, oh, games are frivolous or games are, you know, not important.
Right.
So
you're going to become addicted and socially isolated. We must take them away. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, all of your stuff, like from the cover of your book to your website to your YouTube, is so professional and just easy to understand and clear. And I can't wait to share that with our communities, and then also at my school, because we try to, what I love about my job is we try to do parent workshops and different things to reach more people instead of just individual counseling program, which we have as well. But I'm going to share all of that with my school too.
Great. Great.
And I hope people will go out and get your books, because they really are really useful. And the topic is just so relevant. And like, this is the book, right? That you want. So
yes.
Yeah. And
it's the only one there is.
Only one. So thank you so much for coming on our show. This has been such a pleasure.